Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Sports Inquirer Show. This is Emar Self-Retweet recording this on April 7th, 2020. Hope everything is going well with you wherever you're listening to our show. As always, we want to follow everything that we're doing. Head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net. Premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You head over to there. You'll see all of our archives of previous shows and broadcasts and exclusive interviews from various entities, and that's a really good way to catch up on everything that we're doing as we deal with the coronavirus. And a lot of us are, if you're listening to this, I'm pretty sure you have a stay-at-home order at this stage of the game, like I do, and I'll get into all of that stuff throughout the show as far as how I'm occupying my time. But the best way to follow everything that we're doing as far as web content goes is to go to the sportsinquirer.net. You can also go to Twitter and Instagram. Go to our pages on there. It's under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. So make sure you go there to find out everything that we're doing. Go to Facebook as well. We have two pages on there. We have the Sports Inquirer, those are separate words, and then Sports Inquirer, which is one word. So you go to either one of those pages, you'll get all of our updates and everything that we're doing. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and on SoundCloud under Sports Inquirer. You do a search on there, you'll see everything that we're doing there. And it's a really good way to keep updated. If you subscribe to us or like us, you'll get updates through your various platforms, whether it's email, not necessarily text, but emails or notices or alerts. Everything we post something new. So that's a really good way to keep track of everything that's going on. As far as what we're doing like everyone else, man. We're just trying to stay healthy, stay right mentally and physically. It's really reaching to the point where spring is the busiest time of the year for sports as far as other entities, because everything kind of comes together. Outside the NFL, which has a draft in a few weeks, we're at this stage of the game, we'll be at the conclusion of the NCAA basketball tournaments for men and women, so college athletics. We'll be at the conclusion of the regular season or towards the end for NHL and NBA. Baseball season would have been about 2 weeks into it. We would have had the Masters already take place in golf, and that would be the first major sport we'll talk about as far as the effects of the coronavirus, because there's a new calendar for the rest of the year as far as golf goes. If you're into international soccer, the leagues would have been heading towards the end. The English Premier League, La Liga, all the way down the line. MLS would have been in full swing about 2 months into their year. So this would have been a time of, and I mean, that's not even including all of the spring college sports like baseball and softball, track and field, tennis, golf. You go down the line with all of those. And in high schools, similar deal. A lot of those Olympic-style sports. And we also been in preparation for the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, as far as going to take place this summer in Japan. We would have had a lot of national championships and Olympic trials and things along those lines. So that's about 60% of things I can think of. Auto racing, NASCAR and Formula One, IndyCar, all of those would have been in about a month or two into their seasons. So it's a lot going on as far as sports being canceled. And I think you're starting to see the crunch now as far as the realities of these seasons maybe not taking place as we anticipated. Really concerned about the NHL and the NBA because we're in the first week of April, and I know they don't want to cancel the seasons at all for several reasons, and we've gone over them on past shows, from the revenue that it gains from TV and at the gate, to the players wanting to be active and be involved, to all of the concession workers and people tied to the ancillary aspects of having live sporting events. Everyone's hurting right now in that regard. And the sports leagues and the teams have done a good job, and the players at various leagues making contributions to try to take care of workers, and whether in-house with the organization, because we see so much of the actual players on the field. And they're the major part of the sporting event, of course, but there are the players and coaches. I'll kind of put them in there, but they're trainers. There's media staffs, marketing, security. You just go down and list ticket sales. They're going to be hurting quite a bit because right now, all the ticket sales, especially for those winter sports like hot soccer, I'll say soccer, and because I mentioned some of the international teams, as far as non-United States related, But NBA and NHL, this would be a big push right now for season ticket renewals or for packages for next season, things like that. So they're really hurting right now in that regard because there's no games to sell because we don't know what the next calendar, we don't know how the setup's going to be because we may have an NHL and NBA season starting in December next year in comparison to November or maybe even January of 2021. They may just wipe out all sports, and we'll get to football because football's coming as far as potential cancellations. I know you're saying it's only April, but plans are already being made. That's why the NFL has delayed the release of the schedule because that would have been done already. We really don't know what's going on, but as far as just the spring sports, I'll stick to those. Spring into summer, it's been hit in a major way. And as I said, I don't know if any of these sports are. I don't think there'll be a cancellation, but the altering of these sports, and especially ones that have already taken place and already started. Major League Baseball is in not too bad of a shape. Neither is Major League Soccer because I think there were 2 regular season games that took place, and the baseball hadn't started yet. So those teams or those sports can really, in earnest, start back up in July or June or July, play a condensed schedule, and still have their postseasons kind of take place in the fall and into September and October. Major League Soccer goes all the way into December, so they have a bigger. Now they have to deal with some international calendars and those are being postponed though, as far as CONCACAF and UEFA, as far as those international competitions. Those are not going to take place this year, so maybe the international windows will be different. But if you were just starting out your season, like MLS, or if you're Major League Baseball, not even starting your season, you're not as bad of a shape as far as NBA and NHL, who still have a postseason to take place after playing, I would say, 70 to 80% of their regular seasons. So it's a fluid situation, and you hear administrations from President Trump and on down. I'm not getting political, but I mean, it is not just him, but you kind of hear from different entities of we're going to try to have sports take place at a certain time or by June or July. I really don't know the answer to that. I'm assuming that sports will be postponed or canceled, honestly, until probably August, and that's just the unfortunate state that we're in. I know they're trying to have alternatives as far as playing in empty arenas, and but the problem with that is their road teams have to travel. How do they get to the different parts of the country? Whether if you tried to fly in the past month, you know the issues with that. So I've heard that they may try to play at neutral locations as far as like Arizona or Florida, because where the spring training is. I'm talking baseball wise. Problem is, I mean, they still have to travel and be in the environment. So I don't know how you can specifically have a situation of people being in one centralized location. Professional wrestling and mixed martial arts with the UFC, they are, and I'm going to do a specific show on that as far as the verbal submission, which is another podcast that you can listen to on our various platforms I talked about earlier. They're kind of different because they are sort of their own entities. Now, they do have to, especially with UFC or mixed martial arts with athletic commissions, they do have to deal with some of that stuff. But I know they're still trying to have events, and it's WrestleMania. It was this past weekend, and it was definitely different. And UFC is still trying to hold events in April and May, but it's to the point where they may try to go to different islands and different tribal locations that aren't under the jurisdiction of the United States. Seriously, that's not a joke. That's really what's happening. But outside of those, you really don't know what's going to go on as far as esports go. So we're just rolling with it and trying to see what happens. But we do know one sport that has made some official changes to their calendar, and that is professional golf. First of all, we had the Open Championship, or the British Open. That's been canceled completely. First time since World War II that took place. And kind of an offshoot on that, it's amazing. You hear some of these different entities that have been affected by this. I think the St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York was canceled for the first time in 200 plus years. I know there is a church in Jerusalem which has not been closed since, I think, the 1300s. So I'll look it up for the next show and I'll get those specifics. But just hearing these years that were even baseball. I mean, and outside of that strike in '95, there should be a World Series. We all should hope so. But you've seen these sports in different entities that world wars have happened. We've had September 11th happen here in the United States, and the show goes on. But to see the Open Championship not take place for the first time in close to 80 something years is really interesting. And the schedule that's we're kind of rolling out right now is the PGA Championship is going to be August 6th and 9th. It's previously scheduled for May. The U.S. Open's now going to be in September at Winged Foot, supposed to be in June. And the Ryder Cup, they're going to try to squeeze that in at Whistling Straits in September. And then the Masters, which should have taken place this past weekend, is now going to be November 12th to 15th at Augusta. And obviously that was supposed to be scheduled originally in April. It's just a change in the schedule. I think weather could be a factor because I see some areas that not necessarily the cold. I mean, the cold is a factor in wind, but rain, snow, I mean, all those things can be factors when you start heading into September and November. You also have the biggest thing that golf wants to avoid is conflict with football. Now, we'll get to football in a little bit later on in the show as far as that may not be taking place. But having these events in the fall just throws a big wrench into viewership and into just the logistics of everything that is happening. Because golf, and then I look at this condensed schedule too. I know they say they're a month. It still kind of stays a month between tournaments. But as far as the golfers go, it really has to be an alternative. You have to change your schedule because I'm looking at 4 major events in a. No, you get October off a little bit. I will say that you do get October off. It's not as bad as I initially thought. Just looking at it calendar-wise, but still, you go from August to PGA Championship. You get about a month to get the U.S. Open in. Quick turnaround for the Ryder Cup. I mean, right now the Ryder Cup is scheduled, and I believe it's in United States soil. Let's see, Whistling Straits. We'll do a search right now while I'm rambling here and talking about everything that's going on. But the point is, 4 major events within a 3-month span. That is a lot to deal with. And yeah, it's in Wisconsin. That's what Sheboygan County. Yeah, Whistling Straits. I just wanted to confirm that. So that's in the United States as well. So you have Winged Foot from 17th to 20th, and then the 25th, 27th at Whistling Straits. So you stay within the United States. I guess that does help as far as travel goes. But yeah, that's a lot that they have to deal with and adjust to. I think the younger golfers are going to have more of a benefit in this deal. I mean, if you're a Tiger Woods fan or Phil Mickelson or some of those other guys, now you can say, and Tiger Woods, let's talk about him because he's the most known golfer on tour. Obviously, he has to wait to defend his Masters championship, but he was not playing very much at all the first part of this calendar year. I think he would have gone into the Masters if it was originally scheduled without playing a tournament. So he does get a lot more time as far as to get healthy and get his body right. But you got to assume he's going to play the PGA and the U.S. Open. You don't know. By the time he gets to the Masters, how does his body hold up with a condensed schedule? So he gets more time to prep for it, and I'm sure he's resting right now. And it's not just him. I mean, it's all the golfers, and all of them have dealt with various injuries I can think of as far as their come up, or as far as the top guys. But yeah, I think that you do see golf have, so they're saying August as far as their first event. I think that's a fair assumption of something that you can have happen as far as if you look at what the situation is right now. I think August does give you a little bit of time to prepare and plan. But at least they were the first major entity as far as a spring sport, professional spring sport, that has given us a time of when they're going to be returning to action and returning to play. So just something that was interesting to see that and to keep an eye out on. And as I said, by the time we do our next show, things might change. It's really, I've prepared shows and made notes, and the next day it's all been thrown away. So we're just rolling with as far as the events and saying that this is going to happen and that. But yeah, things are always changing, and I said we're rolling with it as well. One thing that hasn't changed in a way, or I think a sport that's gotten more attention or gotten more television, is esports. that's been interesting in the fact that it really is. It kind of is the epitome of 2020 isolation and technology. The fact that myself, that I'm talking to you right now, and you're listening to this wherever you are, is unique. But also, I could play video games, and I'm sure all of you out there have done chats, video chats, or group text, or something along those lines, where you're communicating with friends and family, or doing your work business in that regard. And esports has really stepped up to the plate, and I think these networks are really desperate for content. I love, and we'll get into some of the. I love NFL films and old baseball clips and old basketball games. Those are, I like those. But if I've seen it once, I know the result. It's very tough to watch. And I know that an NBA tried to do that this weekend with the Hall of Famers. That will break that down. They had old games of Kevin Garnett and Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. I've already seen those games. I remember watching those games live, and that's cool, and it's good for the younger generation, guys who have not seen those games before. That's good to have those take place, and because you hear the names, but to actually see them in action, that is a good thing. I'm like that with sporting events from the 60s and 70s. Those are kind of cool to see those games, as far as old athletes, because I wasn't alive then, so that's good. But as I said, I've seen all these contests. I can't watch a replay. I mean, I can, but it's very, very tough to watch replays of all of these games and all of these contests. But esports has done a good job of doing it as far as playing the games, the video games, on a digital level with the simulators. I've enjoyed the auto racing part. I must admit, I have been watching on Fox Sports. They've been doing where the race was actually supposed to be on the weekends. They've had all of the NASCAR drivers on the simulators, and I enjoy that. I have been watching that, and it's been intriguing. It's something because it's not something I'm too familiar with. I know the guys simulate for the training and everything like that, but I'm actually intrigued by watching some of them run those. They run the dirt tracks. I guess there's the big track in Charlotte, so they've done the simulations, and that's been on broadcast TV, and they're broadcasting and calling them like they're actually taking place. So that's been okay. The NBA one, I'm not liking those as much. It's just there's little interest in seeing, and I know they're trying to, and what they've been doing, and especially it's been on ESPN, is the different players. They've been playing a video game, a basketball game. They don't play with their own teams, which is interesting, and they have the chats and they try to talk. But if you've played video games and you see these athletes, one, this the clean version of it, and I know they have to be clean. That's understandable, but there's no profanity, no cursing. The trash talking is at a very minimal because they know they're being recorded, and you don't want to be out there MFing the whole time and just doing that. They don't want that image out there, and that's understandable, but it does limit the intrigue. There's no gambling. Athletes like to gamble. A lot of people like, even non-athletes, but you have the most competitive athletes in the world against each other, and there's no money on the table. I'll just tell you from stuff we hear, it's very, very rare. So that's a little bit less. They might be doing it on the side and not announcing it. I don't know, but it's a very sedated version of the games, and it's hard to track. At least with the auto races, the visuals a little bit better. You see the cars, you can see the different colors and things like that. The basketball one, it's tough to see who's shooting the ball, who's passing it, because they try to have the guys, just the visual of it. The two guys, the two players, they try to have their heads up there, but then with the court as well, just the visual of it doesn't really work for me. I understand why they're trying to do it, but and then also I have no interest in a virtual horse game. What the NBA has been trying to do now as well is for a horse game. It's a shot competition. You against another person, you do different shots from different parts of the court, and whoever makes the most wins. And that's the logistics or the basics of horse competition. So myself, if I was an NBA player A, I'd find a court somewhere, and I would be shooting the ball against NBA player B where he's at, and different layups and 3-point shots, or different trick shots along those lines. It's a little bit better than the esport version of basketball, because these are actual guys physically doing some stuff. That's good, so that's better, and you might get some more dialogue going. But still, it's not a replacement for the actual game and the auto racing as well. Even that, I mean, as fun as it's been to see the virtual races, it's not the same as actual audio racing. So even with that, I see what the networks and guys are trying to do as far as bringing that up and making things interesting. But overall, my interest is that has been very minimal as far as that goes. And I know baseball is going to maybe try. All the sports are going to try to do something along those similar lines. But as far as NBA and auto racing, those are probably the bigger esports as far as actual. And I'm not talking about the war games or the combat sport type of games. But basketball is very big, and then the auto racing is very popular. So as I said, I understand the effort of what they're trying to do, but overall, I'm just not intrigued by it. And we'll touch on football right now. We'll transition into that. As I said, I mentioned a little bit earlier, President Trump saying the NFL season can start on time. So in essence, we're looking at usually the first game of the season is the weekend after. It's the Thursday or the weekend after Labor Day. So that's early September as far as the games. And that's when he says when he says the season's starting, you still have to go through a training camp. You still could get some preseason games. So what we're looking at is the NFL teams reporting to their training camp in their facilities. We're going to say mid to late July as far as getting proper training in and preparation, because you want to have all of August to have the exhibition games and all of those things before you start a regular season in September. So we're in April right now. So April, June, July. So we're talking about maybe 2 months before people can actually go to their training facility and practice and play. I think that's a little bit optimistic in that regard. And once again, that's why the NFL schedule, including the preseason schedule, which takes place in August, has not been released yet. Because, as I can say right now, with stuff that we're doing, facilities aren't open as far as, we're talking NFL wise. Some teams have had to do some conference calls and some video chats with the free agent signees. The NFL draft is later on this month. They'll probably do a similar thing as far as that goes, as far as availability. But there's not, and right now in April, we would have had guys with mini camps and just voluntary workouts, guys at least in the facility lifting weights, doing some drills, things along those lines. That's not happening at all. All NFL facilities are closed, shut down. Even guys who are currently on the roster, say I'm a player, I will play Atlanta because we're based in Atlanta. I'm an Atlanta Falcons player. I want to go down to the facility, meet with the trainer, meet with my doctors. I'm rehabbing an injured knee. I can't do that because the facility is closed. I can't have contact with any of my trainers as far as physical contact. Even the physicals to have signees has been delayed. They just announced Todd Gurley. He signed with the team, I would say, 10 days ago. But they only announced yesterday that he was officially an Atlanta Falcon because they finally got a physical done on him. So you look at all of that stuff, and we're in April. When you have an NFL draft and these free agent signees, they all have to go through the same process and get that together by mid to late July. We'll see what happens. I hope it happens. Trust me, I'm not a big fan of President Trump, but I will say this. If this sports optimism translates, and if it really happens, that'd be good for all parties involved. And he has been on a conference call with a lot of commissioners and team owners in the various sports, with Vince McMahon and Dana White, as well as far as NFL or as far as UFC and World Wrestling Entertainment. So he has optimistic twist on things as far as sports. And to be fair, there is some time. It's not like saying that, we're going to start sports next week. So I do look at the logistics of the calendar, and it's a good goal to have. So I can't knock him as far as that goes, but it's still very optimistic. And I will say it does give people at least a goal or at least a tangible time, like I just did with my calendar breakdown, as far as what we can see or maybe look towards as a tangible date or time frame. And I said, as far as those go, but that's with sports that have not really started yet, as I mentioned with the football and college football, which we'll transition into right now. Those sports haven't started yet, so it's a little bit easier to make that deal. The thing I've also noticed as well, just doing reading and research, and because there's a lot of time to do that, college sports is in a really tricky situation right now. We already mentioned the cancellation of the spring sports and even the end of winter sports. No NCAA tournament, men and women. That was very. You really felt that this past 10 days because we would have had the Final Four. We would have, and it would have been in Atlanta. We would have been there too. We got a nice hookup there. I would have been there for business, but still, just having the atmosphere. People in Atlanta were excited about it. Just having the event here in the Metro Atlanta area. So that didn't take place. The women's Final Four didn't take place in that tournament. Wrestling, I'm a big college wrestling. I do follow it quite a bit. That didn't take place, so those were bad. But then you had sports like the spring sports, lacrosse, that's in baseball, tennis. They were really in the very beginnings of their regular seasons, about a month into it, and those got shut down completely. So those seasons are done, and I'm glad that they were able to get the bill or to get an extra year eligibility for the people. So if you're a senior, now I have to see if it's going to translate as far as the underclassmen. If I'm a sophomore and I lost this year, do I get an automatic red shirt to be a redshirt sophomore now, or about medical injury? So there's a lot to still work through on that, and we talked about that in a previous show. You have to deal with, especially these spring sports. A lot of them are partial scholarships. It's different than football or basketball, where you have a full scholarship for the most part. Sorry, looking at Division I sports. A lot of spring sports are partial, so you get 50% of a scholarship or 25%. How does that translate as far as the players, as far as the numbers go? And furthermore, you look at it from, if I was, also I'm a baseball coach, or I'm looking at that, I am graduating 6 seniors from this year normally, but I signed a class of 6 freshmen to come in. Now, what if 4 of those seniors want to come back for this next season? What do I do about those freshmen? And that's where you get to the numbers and logistics of it. Do I get extra scholarship? Since do they count as a red shirt? So maybe it's not part of my scholarship grouping, or as far as what my numbers are. And something that you really have to think about. And when it all settles in, I haven't reached out to athletic directors yet and coaches, because everyone's dealing with their own situations and their own deal right now as we're talking on April 7th. But I think by the end of the month, I'll start talking to coaches and talking to some of the athletic directors and get some more tangible information as far as that goes, as with the ruling and everything, because they're scrambling right now, I think, to figure that out as well. But to tie it back to college football and saying that the college athletics is in an interesting spot, everything I mentioned about the NFL carries over to college football. And what the difference in college football, furthermore, is that, and we've seen, and I read a report now that college dorms in New York State, I think California, maybe Florida, definitely know New York State, some of those dorms are being turned into a hospital. Well, it's for care for the sick. So how long does that last? As far, and hopefully you would assume that maybe by the time this fall semester comes around, that maybe the people that are sick will be treated and hopefully are taken care of and out of the dorms. But you have a group of thousands of young people heading to a college campus and having to deal with all of that stuff. And furthermore, you're trying to have football games. So you have to deal with all of that. And while the NFL, it's all about you go to the game in the NFL stadium and then you go home, a lot of these colleges, stadiums are on campus or are very close to campus. It's definitely a different setup as far as that goes. So if the logistics of the college football season get changed or altered, the finances get hurt in a major, major way. I don't care if you are in Ohio State or Texas or in Alabama with the top 5 or top 10 richest teams as far as revenue generation, or if you are a lower level ACC team that draws 20,000 to a game, or even down to Division II and Division III, and you get 5,000 per contest. Football is the biggest revenue generator in a college athletic department. Now, some teams do make money off of their basketball, and some are baseball, even gymnastics that'll make some money off of their those other sports. But football is the big revenue generator for two reasons. One, whenever you get thousands of people in one area, your gate is strong, your concessions, parking, your other businesses surrounding the stadium are generating significant amount of money in a big way. So that helps out just the town or the city. And a lot of these college towns, whether you are in the Southeast or the Midwest or West Coast, that is a big revenue generator, having those 6 to 8 Saturdays per year of having home contests. And then two is the TV money. Everyone has a TV contract, it's at least in Division One level. Some are massive, like the Big Ten and the SEC. Some are maybe not as big, like Conference USA or the Sun Belt or the WAC. But everyone has a TV contract, and whether you get a check cut out for millions of dollars, like the SEC teams or Big Ten, or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands in the non-BCS conferences, money is money, and you take that. And not having games hurts that in a major way, because if there are no games, there's no ad revenue. It just it trickles down into not having money to fund your athletic department. And we've already seen athletic departments run in the red. Even some of the biggest ones you can think of, some that are ACC and SEC programs, lose money currently. And you think, man, they have a big contract with CBS or ESPN. That you see they got, and even the ACC or the Big Ten, or they all have their own networks. So you think, man, they must be bringing in the dough. And you see the stadiums, 60, 70,000 people, and they're still losing money, which is crazy, but it does happen. And that's what games taking place. If those games are eliminated, it can get much worse. And then that ties into the non-revenue generating sports, or the lower revenue generating sports, your volleyballs, your soccers, your baseballs, both sport, men and women's sports. It's not a gender thing at all. Those sports just do not generate the revenue. And I'm saying, and we've seen it with sports like wrestling that have had programs canceled because part of it's Title IX as far as the distribution of scholarships, but also lack of revenue generation from some of the other big sports. So it's something that you have to think about and look at as far as what's going on. I think that, once again, the fall is going to be a very strong period for sports, and football will be back in some form. But still, it's a lot to think about and a lot to consider as far as what's been going on. And then finally, we'll end the show on talking about the Hall of Fame selections as far as the NBA. Well, see, I slipped up there. I say the NBA, but it really is the Basketball Hall of Fame. And I think it's where a lot of people get it twisted when they look at some guys get elected to the Hall of Fame, and they say and I'll say for NBA players, hey, he only made 2 or 3 NBA All-Star games. He didn't win a championship. He only scored X amount of points, which is fair. But that guy may have had a really strong college career or a high school career, or done really well at the international level, representing his country at FIBA tournaments or the Olympics, world championships, things like that. And then you put that all together and you look at it and it's like, okay, I can see him being a Hall of Famer. They're Hall of Famers in the Basketball Hall of Fame. That's redundant. There are guys who never played in the NBA and are in the Basketball Hall of Fame because it's a sport of basketball. They had distinguished careers in European leagues or South American leagues and did really well when they represented their country at the international level. But still, this class, I think, in the next show, I may break down memories of each of these guys individually, but this may be the best class ever. And I know you'll look back and maybe see whatever class Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in, or Michael Jordan was in, or Wilt Chamberlain, or Magic Johnson. Those classes were the best because those guys are all-time top, or Bill Russell, whatever. Those are the best of the best, without question. But when you have Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, and Kevin Garnett in any Hall of Fame class all together, it's just a special time. I mean, Kobe Bryant, unfortunately, is passing earlier this year. We would have reflected on his career right now a lot more, but we've been doing that for months, and deservedly so. He was an all-time great player and really did a lot off the court. But still, you look at the numbers: 18-time All-Star, 5-time champion, all defense, and all three of these guys, all defensive teams, 10 plus years or 10 plus times in their career. But Kobe, maybe the best of his generation. Tim Duncan, 15-time All-Star, 3-time NBA Finals MVP. He also won 5 individual championships. I mean, Duncan, maybe the best forward, power forward history of the league. His numbers and his performances stand for themselves. Kevin Garnett, 15-time All-Star, 9-time NBA All-NBA Defensive First Team, NBA champion as well with the Celtics. The funny thing about these three guys is I remember watching them in high school, 2 of them in high school, and then one of them college from his freshman year. Because I'm 38 right now. I turned 39 later on this year. And these guys were in their early 40s. So I'm right there, kind of in their generation. I remember when Garnett went straight to the NBA from playing his final year in Chicago at Farragut Academy. Remember Kobe Bryant playing at Lower Merion and going into the NBA and seeing those guys play at the high school level and that development. Tim Duncan from Wake Forest from his freshman year, and seeing all of these guys play and seeing their moves, their championships, and Kobe when he first got into the league and his dynasty with Shaquille and with Phil Jackson, and later on his career with Paul Gasol and all that stuff. And I said Kobe, we've talked about it ad nauseum, so I'll move on from him. But Tim Duncan, him coming into the league, winning his championship during that strike-shortened year against the Knicks when I was living in New York, and just seeing that guy from coming into the league his second year, that this guy is going to be special, and he became, as I said, probably the best player ever at his position, and all those titles and MVPs with the Spurs. Kevin Garnett, as I said, I think the first guy. Well, there are some other guys kind of went straight from prep to NBA, but really since Moses Malone in the 70s, he was the first guy to be in the NBA draft and drafted by the Timberwolves, signed that big contract, $100+ million. I think his second or third year in the league. He teamed up with Stephon Marbury. He's a New York guy from Brooklyn, so I was following that closely. Him going through all of his, being with the Timberwolves all those years, trade to the Celtics, winning a title. So I saw these guys from high schoolers to now men in their 40s, because I was in that same kind of age range. So because I mentioned those other guys like Kareem and Wilt and Russell, Bird, those guys were in Magic. They were kind of before my time. I mean, I've seen all their videos, and I love watching archive stuff. But those are older guys. Those guys are playing in the 80s and 70s. I wasn't even born yet, or I was very young. I was a toddler. But to see these guys as teenagers, when I was a teenager as well, and going through their careers, it is pretty cool to see those guys get into the Hall of Fame, and it should be a really fun event. And then the other guys, I know each of these players as well on some level. Let's see. Eddie Sutton, 4-time National Coach of the Year. I remember we coached at Oklahoma State, took them to a Final Four. I know we coached at Kentucky and various other places. He finally got in. Rudy Tomjanovich. I didn't see him play. I'm not that old. But I remember he was the champion head coach for the Rockets during their 2 years when they beat the Magic and the Knicks in the 90s. So I follow him quite well. Tamika Catchings, I was at Vanderbilt. She was at Tennessee. Beat us a lot when I was at Vanderbilt. So I know Tamika very well. I'm following her the WNBA and with the Indiana Fever and all that stuff. So she was in. Kim Mulkey, 3-time NCAA champion for the Baylor women's team. She's still going strong and all that stuff. So and then also Barbara Stevens and Patrick Baumann, 2 players. Well, Barbara, very successful at the Division II level coaching, and then long-time FIBA executive Patrick. So I don't know their careers too well, but obviously they Hall of Fame worthy. So this is really the first Hall of Fame class that I can tangibly relate to and realize that I saw a lot of these players and coaches while I was in my come up as far as sports go. So as I said, we'll discuss that class a little bit further, especially we'll see when the ceremony takes place. Obviously, fluid situation with everything else going on, and we knew those guys would get in. We knew that Kobe, Duncan, and Garnett would be Hall of Famers, their first time on the ballot, but just see it confirmed was very cool to check out and everything along those lines. And that's going to conclude today's show. Thanks for listening. As always, follow everything that we're doing at the sportsinquirer.net. Go to our Twitter pages And Instagram, Sports Inquirer. It's all one word. Facebook, The Sports Inquirer. And then subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. Be safe.